Bonjour and welcome. Trudeau is out. I'm not really going to talk much about that, but it is true that our neighbor to the north is going to have a new leader because Justin Trudeau is resigning, according to the Wall Street Journal, as voters sour on his vision for Canada. Thank you for joining. This is Two-Way Tonight. We're joining today at 4 Eastern Time. Why, might you ask, are we joining so early? Just imagine hypothetically that you're married and have a son who's turned 8 today, and your wife has the same birthday as your son. Imagine everybody in this household was born on January 6th. Not the best date to be born at this point, according to some, but nonetheless, that's their birthday. They're both born on January 6th. They're here getting ready to go out, night on the town for every member of my family to celebrate their birthday. That's why we're meeting 4 o'clock. Thank you for making time. This program is intended to be a full open discussion with peace, love, and understanding. Whether you're watching on YouTube or here on the Two-Way platform or on X, very glad you're here. Please, if you raise your hand to ask a question, if you're here on the Two-Way platform, bring to it the presumption of grace towards all. Ask whatever question you want. You can disagree in a spirited way with anything. Just remember to be civil and nice and not engage in negative attacks. And that goes for people in the chat. Some of you are sick of hearing me say it, but we've made progress. I don't want to give up now. The chat should be the same thing. If you want to write smack, write it someplace else. Thank you for joining. We're going to be joined today, I believe, unless I'm wrong, by Mark Caputo, who started a new job today with a bang. We'll talk about that. And we'll talk a little bit about what's going on with the Trump administration, with Joe Biden, and with Vice President Harris. As always, excited for your questions and comments. If you're here on the Two-Way platform and you want in on the conversation with Mark Caputo, me, and other surprise guests coming soon, please raise your electronic hand. Hugo has his hand up already, setting a good example. We love people who've never asked questions before. Karen McDonald's here. She tried 3 times to ask questions this morning, couldn't get her audio to work. I'm hoping she raises her hand and has audio because I can't wait to hear what Karen has to say. Thank you again for being part of this platform. As I said this morning, some of you weren't on this morning. We have lots of things in store on the Two-Way platform in 2025 with these existing programs, the morning meeting and Two-Way Tonight, and some new programs that are coming. Some that are about politics, but some that are not, but are with really, really interesting people with the same opportunity to have authentic, long, sophisticated conversations that help to build community around shared interests and compelling community participants. So thank you again for joining. Big news of the day, of course, was the dog that did not bark, the peaceful and very short ceremony during which the election of Donald J. Trump and J.D. Vance were certified by a joint session of Congress with the losing candidate, the Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris, presiding. The whole thing was, filled with pageantry, and if you didn't get a chance to watch it, you may want to go back and watch it. It's kind of compelling, the whole thing, and see where people cheer and smile and everything else. This is just a little bit of the vice president announcing the defeat and referencing herself in the third person, Trump style. Roll tape.
Votes for President of the United States are as follows. Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida has received 312 votes. Kamala D. Harris Kamala D. Harris of the state of California has received 226 votes.
All right. So again, a great peaceful transfer of power. No objections from the Democrats. Donald Trump now a fortnight away from taking the oath of office on January 20th. And between now and then, lots is going to get done, including confirmation hearings for a lot of members of his cabinet, teed up for January 20th, and confirmations, if they hope, and a lot of discussion about what to do about the Trump legislative agenda. Donald Trump this morning on Hugh Hewitt, while we were on the air with morning meeting, talked about continuing being basically agnostic about whether he wanted to go with the Senate strategy of 2 separate reconciliation bills, or what the House seems to prefer, which is one jumbo bill. We talked this morning at great length about the pros and cons of both. Most people I know who have legislative and political expertise believe the House plan is better. That in the end, although there are pluses and minuses on both sides, as I like to say, doing a difficult thing once is easier than doing a difficult thing twice. And getting people to vote for either bill is going to be a challenge because there's going to be devil in the details on both things. The tax bill is more complicated, which is why the people who want to do two separate bills want to do two separate bills, because they think getting to taxes quickly is tough. But they've had 4 years on this, and there's really no mystery about what the dimensions are of where they might go. There is a lot of detail to work out, but this is not a new administration starting from scratch. This is a returning administration that for 4 years not only engaged in a lot of politics and a lot of defense against legal cases, but also had a big, robust policy team, particularly at its kind of in-house think tank, that worked through a lot of the questions on all these policy issues that are now coming to the fore. Part of the reason Donald Trump was able to staff his administration as quickly as he did, and remember, there were jobs filled well, many jobs filled well before Thanksgiving, well before Christmas. Previous transitions I've covered, you've got, Christmas Eve announcements of big jobs because of delay. Part of why they were able to do that so quickly is because they had 4 years to think about it. There were personnel lists at Mar-a-Lago for months and months, maybe longer, and many of the people selected were drawn from those lists. So this is going to be a very busy 2 weeks in Trump world. And on January 20th, you're going to see a flurry of activity. Again, maybe a record number, for instance, of executive orders signed. On the Democratic side, I think that there's still a search for a comfortable place to land on saying why was Trump able to win? And you've got the dominant school, which James Carville gave voice to over the weekend, that said it was all the economy. The economy was bad. Voters did not buy what was being sold by Joe Biden first and then by Kamala Harris. And people remembered the Trump economy more fondly. I'd credit that as a big part of what happened. But I think if Democrats want to go with just that, they're missing what a lot of my sources say are also extremely important variables, some with applicability to the future, some not, just with applicability towards historical understanding. There's almost no public discussion amongst Democrats about the role of Joe Biden played and Kamala Harris played in her defeat. And you saw Chuck Schumer on Meet the Press basically deny that there was an acuity problem, deny that Biden's acuity problem played a role in the loss. These are extremely important parts of why I believe, and my sources believe, Harris lost. But if you just focus on the economy and you leave out Afghanistan and the forever wars, you leave out immigration, you leave out the cultural issues. I've said it before. Reagan's three-legged stool to me is the right metaphor here. National security, economics, and cultural social issues. And so the Carville school says we just didn't talk about the economy well enough. And that's basically what Schumer said too. Even if you go a step further and say it's not just a comms problem, we don't have the right policies that resonate on economics. Even then, my sources that I trust as in terms of their judgment, they don't have a what I believe is a global view of what happened. And of course, the only way to come up with a solution to not lose the next presidential election, even though it won't be against Donald Trump, is is to understand what happened in 2024. The chair race for DNC chair, two schools of thought on this. I'm in one camp, which says the DNC chair really matters. If you don't have the White House, and if you've got in Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, two guys who are not going to dominate the national dialogue, and you've in the minority in particular, and if you don't have any Democratic governors who are of the type who can really dominate the discussion from Harrisburg or from Lansing, then the DNC chair is a big deal, as Ron Brown proved in 1990, 1990, 91, 92. Raise money, build up the party, coordinate with the legislators, coordinate with the presidential candidates in waiting, and drive a message with confidence on television and on social. Okay. I think if you don't have someone who can fill that role, you're not taking full advantage of the slot. There are many people I respect who say, no, this is just a job to keep the state parties happy, to raise money, to do the mechanics of list building and be prepared for the midterms. I respect that point of view. I don't agree with it. the people of that point of view are very happy with the two frontrunners. At this point, the DNC chair is likely to be either the current chair of the Minnesota party or the current chair of the Wisconsin party. Okay. Mr. Martin and what's the other guy's name? I always say his name wrong. Noah, what's that guy's name? Chair of the Wisconsin party.
I gotta throw it to you.
Huh. I'll think of his name. I just forget it for the moment. I think he's going to be the DNC chair. Um, and and I think he'll be a very capable mechanic. But neither of them is a nationally known figure. Ben Wickler, thank you, Ben Wickler. I think he's going to win as of now. My sources don't think anybody else big is getting in who's going to overtake those two guys, both of whom have a lot of commitments. And remember, the DNC members are the electorate here. And the DNC members tend to like to vote for another DNC member, not always, but typically. And these two guys are very well connected in that world. But I'll say again, if you're looking for the Democratic Party to have a frame on Donald Trump that's effective, and if you're looking for somebody who can drive a message on a daily basis, I don't think either of these two guys, as strong as they are in a lot of things, I don't think either of them can do it. Donald Trump will be dominating the news. He already has to a large extent, in an unprecedented manner in this transition, but he'll really be dominating the news after January 20th, for good, sometimes for ill, for others, for him and for the party. But competing with that is very difficult to do. And if you don't have the majority in either chamber, and you don't have any governors, and you don't have a DNC chair who can do it, somebody has to be that voice. The frame that Democrats, you hear Chuck Schumer and others talk about, is Trump's going to be for tax cuts for the wealthy, and that tax cuts for the wealthy is very unpopular. If you're a Democratic focus group leader, you can come back to your clients and say with an absolute assuredness, voters do not like tax cuts for the wealthy. But the tax cuts aren't just for the wealthy, and it's not the only issue that's going to be in this bill. It's going to be other things in the bill, like on the border, that people like. So I don't think that is the panacea to just say we're all going to say Trump favors tax cuts for the wealthy, because guess what? He was running on tax cuts for the wealthy during the campaign. Now you could say, well, Kamala Harris wasn't good on that issue, good talking about it. Well, we'll see. All right. Thank you again for joining. Raise your hand if you want to ask a question or make a comment. We'll get to you in a moment. But I'm going to bring in a guy nice enough to join us on, if it's not his first day at work, it practically is. Mark Caputo, is this your first day of work? Now, where I come from, first day of work, you might put on a collared shirt, maybe even a tie, but not where you're from. You're from Florida.
Well, it's Miami, man. It's like 70 degrees. So I had to get something a little warmer.
So the fact that you're wearing a shirt with no holes in it means by Miami standards, you're all dressed up.
Yeah. Exactly.
All right, Mark, tell everybody where you're working now.
I'm at Axios now. So I'll be covering the Trump MAGA White House and environs.
Are you going to move from Florida to Washington, D.C., or are you going to cover it from Florida?
I'll be spending some time in D.C., but I'll be spending most of my time here in Florida.
Paying a very low tax, no income tax, which is good.
No income tax, and all the MAGA folks that one could hope for or not hope for, depending on what side of the aisle you hail from.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on your new job.
Thanks.
And congratulations on starting your new job with a bang.
Yep.
The relatively elusive Susie Wiles, who was the co-manager of the Trump campaign and is the incoming White House chief of staff, first woman to ever hold the job, gave you an interview. She hadn't granted very many interviews. And go ahead and put up the headline with Susie Wiles, who is, here you see, Access interview, Susie Wiles vows to block West Wing troublemakers. A lot of the themes she hit on in your interview with her are things I and others have heard her talk about, which is she doesn't have a lot of patience for dissent or troublemaking or disloyalty. And she plans to enforce that in the West Wing. Let me start with the question that I know, because I'm psychic, you get all the time, because I do too, Elon Musk. At Mar-a-Lago, he could move around pretty freely.
Yeah.
Is he going to be able to do that in the White House?
Oh, I imagine so. I mean, understood that when Wiles was talking to me about the ship she's going to run in the White House, she's talking about the staff that she oversees. She's the chief of staff. Elon Musk is not staff. Now, I haven't discussed this with her specifically, so I'm admittedly, talking out of more than one orifice potentially. Is that generally speaking, one of the things that has made Susie Wiles so successful in Trump world is she knows her lane and she sticks to it, and she tries to make sure that everyone else sticks to their lane and everyone understands the mission. And what I mean by that in the context of Elon Musk is Elon Musk is kind of like this the second brother here, right? He is the pal of Donald Trump right now. Donald Trump goes through these sort of fixation periods of people he really likes. Donald Trump really loves people who make lots of money. Elon Musk is a billionaire, ergo, Donald Trump really likes Elon Musk. So knowing how Wiles manages things and her approach to management scenarios is she wouldn't really get over her skis by trying to get in between Elon Musk and Donald Trump. Elon Musk is Donald Trump's problem or benefit or whatever. That's Donald Trump's deal. That's not really her deal. Now, if it starts to interfere with her work, I imagine she will say something in some way, but we're not going to more than likely hear about it because that's just not her style.
To me, as a reporter, one of the things I've always emphasized when I'm working with younger people and trying to sort of give them tools of the trade, tricks of the trade, geography and timelines are vital. If you're trying to piece together a story, you need a timeline. You need to know when everything happened. And if you're trying to understand kind of how people are operating, knowing the real estate is really important. When I was covering the Oklahoma City bombing, I was working for ABC covering special events. So I was in charge of big breaking stories like that. Oklahoma City bombing, pre digital age, I went and got a map out of a map book of Oklahoma
Map
City
book, yeah,
because
back in
I
the
wanted
day.
to know.
Right?
I want to know
Sure.
where is the Murat Federal Building? What's around it? You know, how far is it from the hospital, etc. I've been to Mar-a-Lago. I've been on the patio at Mar-a-Lago, and I've been in the West Wing. And I know it's a lot easier if you're staying on the property at Mar-a-Lago. It's a lot easier to walk towards Trump, and
Sure.
the service is not going to stop you from going to the buffet or stopping by his table if you're Elon Musk.
Yeah.
Whereas in the West Wing, he's got to start someplace. He's not staying. Now, maybe Trump will put him in the Lincoln bedroom and he can walk along the colonnade and he's right in the Oval. But walking into the Oval Office is a little bit different than walking into the patio, right?
Yes.
So
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
so you can say it's not Susie's business, but to me, the chief of staff is in charge of access to the Oval, right? There's something called walk-in privileges, which means you can walk in to see the president whenever you want. And part of the problem in the first Trump administration was pretty much everybody had walk-in privileges, right? Lots of people could just walk right in. So I could imagine Susie Wiles saying, no, 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 no. This time is different. You can't just walk into the Oval Office. You need an appointment with the president.
I imagine that's going to be true for some people. It's just, and again, this is just me sort of talking off the top of my head. I can be
Yeah,
totally wrong. You can be
that's
totally
what
right.
two-way is for.
Right.
All speaking
It's
from
like, hey,
all
let's just,
orifices.
yeah,
Yeah.
right.
What do
Many
you think?
orify, right?
Yeah.
But is Elon Musk is just a different animal in this regard, right?
Yeah.
Like I could see it. I could see Susie using more of her influence in some ways to keep Vivek out, right? Because he just doesn't have the juice. But right now, even though people like to laugh about how Donald Trump sort of likes to laugh about and poke fun at Elon Musk, and there's this big, sort of national media obsession with like, oh, when are they going to have a falling out? Understandably so, because Donald Trump has a telenovela like quality where characters come in and out, they have
Yeah.
falling out, they get resurrected, they appear on new seasons. Is Elon Musk he just has a lot of cachet. And now you are correct. Will he be able to just simply waltz into the White House anytime? No. But I think if he's there, if you had to do kind of senior superlatives of most likely to be able to walk in the president's office, Oval Office without an appointment, I would put Elon Musk at the top of that list. But bottom line, I think what I want to kind of get across here is generally speaking, what's made Susie Wiles successful is she knows her lane and she doesn't try to kind of get in between things and pick fights
Yeah.
and the like. She's going to have her hands full, like any chief of staff is, and like any Trump chief of staff is, because that's just a guy who lets people just kind of walk into his office all the time. Remember, there's an interesting thing in Bob Woodward's otherwise rather bad book that he wrote about the just recently, where he had interviewed Keith Kellogg, the general, who had talked about he's in a meeting with Donald Trump in the Oval Office, and there's all these people around. It's a great anecdote, one of the most interesting parts of the book. And Trump is asking everyone's opinion, and there's a woman there who I think it's a woman who's a note taker, maybe some 20 something. And he's like, well, what do you think? She's like, hey, look, I'm just a note taker. He's like, no, I don't care. You're in the room. That's how Donald Trump is. He likes lots of people in the room. He likes people to have like more walk-in privileges. So open question, but as I said, I don't really see her, and I'm basing this partly on my reaction to the chatter on social media, like, well, there's going to be a clash between Susie and Elon. I just don't really see it.
Yeah. I think, as I've said this before, I don't know that they're going to tire of each other because they're not replaceable, right? There's no other richest man in the world. There's no other president of the United States, So they're singular. Again, if you want another conversation, please raise your hand. So there are all these Floridians in the government, right? The Attorney General nominee is a Floridian. The Secretary of State nominee is a Floridian. Susie's there. I think Susie has the potential to be easily Trump's most successful chief of staff because of her relationship with him.
That's not hard.
I know it's a low bar, but she understands him. He respects her more than he respects most other people. That's just a reality of how he feels. And she knows the players, right? So you've got Secretary of State, Attorney General, Chief of Staff. Who else am I missing? Who are the other Floridians?
NSC advisor,
right?
Waltz,
right. That's just right.
The Surgeon General, who is his sister-in-law, and man, I forgot her last name. Also, interestingly, both of them are the in-laws of the singer of Creed, lead singer of the rock group Creed. One of those fascinating little Florida bits of political knowledge. Let's see. As far as appointees, I'm missing someone.
Yeah, we are missing somebody, but Dr. Oz kind of lives in Palm Beach now too. So
not only does he live in Palm Beach, but Dr. Oz's house, from what I understand, is a thing I should have written about at the time, but didn't. Dr. Oz's house was used as the staging area for RFK during the transition, and apparently it was quite a menagerie of different people. Because if you think Trump world is odd, Bobby world has like the natural farming people, the seed oil people, the anti-vaccine people, who are sort of all together in this sort of real world house. So Oz, definitely an honorary Florida man. And then the administration is just populated with them. I think one of the more interesting characters who didn't get a lot of chatter or coverage during the election for the role he played is Taylor Budowich. He's going to be he's one of the deputy chiefs of staff there. He was the head of the super PAC, came over to the campaign, and just played the part of like bro in chief with Donald Trump. Well-respected, young guy, really smart. And I'm trying to think of who else. Let's see, you said Bondi.
Yeah, we're both missing one, but we'll
like
think
two or three people. Anyway,
couple more questions for you, and then we're going to open it up. Axios. How is Axios different than Semaphore and Politico?
Well, the style, smart brevity, which boils down to this idea is, do you remember like 3/4 of what, or maybe even half, or maybe even a quarter of what you just read online? Probably not. Is a lot of the information we get in the digital era is digital. And it's about boiling down and providing to you the most essential parts and bits of information for you to understand the world and come out smarter and know a little more than you did before. And so with the Wiles interview today, we just wanted to say, okay, this is the woman who is sort of in charge of putting everything together. And here's what she's saying. What she's saying is no staff hijinks. No one steps out of line. We serve the principal being the president serves the people.
Where can people find your work now?
At Axios.com.
And what about on social media?
Oh, at Mark A. Caputo. It's Mark with a C. And yes, my original name is Mark Antonio, and it's actually one word. How do you like that?
And that's on X.
That is on X, and I try to. I think it's the same on Blue Sky, which I don't really pay attention to. Threads, where this thread says you get as much bounce out of Threads as a dead cat falling off a window. So there's not a lot of action there. So yeah, I'm mainly a Twitter person still, or X, or whatever we call it.
How about Instagram? You on Instagram?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram, but I have a private account, which, well, we'll discuss that another time.
All right. Two more questions real quick.
Yeah.
Are any of the Trump cabinet nominees imperiled, or are they all going to be confirmed?
Well, the Trump team thinks they're going to all be confirmed, but then again, every boxer has to think that he's going to win before he steps in the ring, or he's definitely getting beat out. There is an open question about RFK and Tulsi still, and what's
What
interesting
about
is John.
Hegseth?
Well, it's interesting is that John Thune, when the new Senate leader had spoken over the weekend on one of the Sunday shows, and I can't remember which one, he basically said that Hegseth was going to make it through. And what was
Yeah,
interesting about that is he doesn't really say that for Tulsi and RFK.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I think those are the two to watch. But this also starts to get into the whole Senate cloakroom stuff. That's a whole other world.
yeah. Lastly, Trump's having a press conference tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Why has he been so relatively off camera during the transition? And will that continue in the White House as far as you know, or you don't know?
I don't know. I haven't asked that. But what I did ask at the time why he was off camera is he spent a lot of time on camera during the campaign and felt he needed to say the things he needed to say. Remember, Trump is a control freak. He's the I alone can fix it guy. And in a campaign, he is not going to leave it to anyone else but himself to deliver his message. I mean, and for better or worse, that's why the guy's out there like giving 90-minute speeches where it's just like these Castro length meditations, but seemed to work for him. He won.
Yeah. All right, Mark, thank you again for making time on your first day at
Sure.
work to join us.
Happy to.
We're going to try the impossible. We're going to try to get
Mm-hmm.
Karen's mic to work. All right, Karen,
All right,
unmute.
Karen. Boom.
Karen, go ahead. Say something.
Hello.
Oh my
Hi.
goodness.
Yay.
Karen,
Okay.
amazing. Karen, where do you live?
I live in Hyattsville, Maryland. Happy birthday.
Yeah, she's saying happy birthday to you. You heard. Okay. Thank you for that. James, how old are you? 8. Okay.
Excellent.
We'll see you soon. Yeah, I did.
Live TV, folks.
Yeah.
Live TV.
All right. Karen,
Yeah.
Hyattsville, Maryland. Tell us what's on your mind. We're glad you
Yes.
got the audio working.
Yes, me too. So this is a comment, not a question. First of all, I need to say this is a blast from the past. Mark, you and I were in Japanese class at Harvard about 40 years ago.
Oh, we were not. Number one, I'm
Super.
not that old, even though I look it. And
No,
the only thing I could.
she means me. She means me,
How-
I
Mark.
was going to say, there's absolutely no way I could get into Harvard.
Yeah.
I get in there with a mask and a gun.
Yeah.
Karen, how's your
um,
Japanese now?
Really
Japanese.
terrible. Like Duolingo kind of helps me, but
Yeah.
I haven't been
All right.
there in years. But
Okay. That's
that's
awesome.
Yeah, so I'm just excited that I can see you today. My husband sends me the shows in post-production. That's how I get to see them. But since we have a snow day, I'm a teacher in DCPS. And my husband and I voted for Trump 3 times. Some of our adult children canceled us temporarily because of that.
Oof.
And
I'm glad it was only temporary.
yes, we're all talking now. But I had a colleague who asked me how I could be a teacher of English to speakers of other languages and vote for Trump. So it's just been an interesting ride, definitely.
Did you support Republicans for president before Trump?
I did. Yeah, I
You
did.
did. Okay.
Yeah.
And what has caused the rapprochement between you and your kids? Is it just the passage of time, or?
I think just our being consistent and just not canceling them, just loving them and being very supportive. So things have just sort of healed over. So
Yeah. And are you a registered Republican?
I am, and I was a chief election judge for Prince George's County. The first time that Trump was elected was my last stint with that. It was grueling. It was very difficult. So
Well, thank you for sharing all that. Let me ask you a question if I can, then maybe Mark has one. If Trump called you and asked you for advice about how to be a good president this time, what advice would you give him?
I think I would say to continue to stress the importance of bringing jobs back here and just being I guess like taking care of your home first.
Mhm.
I think I would just encourage him to continue to do that.
Yeah. Mark, question or comment?
If you don't mind, I'm interested in race. How difficult is it to be a black woman Republican? You're a unicorn in many regards.
Well, I think where I'm living in Prince George's County, Maryland, it's difficult, but there are a few of us. but I don't really have a lot of opportunities to share what my political views are. I kind of keep that close to the vest because
So it's a little lonely then.
it's I mean it's crazy. It's really
Uh-huh.
I mean, I haven't had any people that have like unfriended me or anything like that, but I have some friends who, after talking to them and convincing them that it would be better for them to vote for Trump. I actually had a friend who she died recently, but before she died, she just got back to speaking with her brother. Like her brother refused to talk to her. It was so sad. It was very, very sad. But yeah, it's a big deal. And I think people are concerned about being outcasts, and that's one of the reasons why they sort of stick with the way that their parents voted, their friends vote. So I think that's part of it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
What did Donald Trump do in his first term that you didn't like?
Oh, something that I did not like. Um, wow. It's so hard to remember what. Oh, I think the thing around COVID where he just got sort of cornered into just doing crazy things. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, no, I mean, my husband and I, we actually were part of the what do you call it, the trial for Moderna.
Mhm.
And we were trying to do it just so people wouldn't be afraid of the vaccine. But, just post, just finding out all the different shenanigans that were going on is just kind of sad that we got pushed into
Yeah.
that.
And who is he nominated for jobs or appointed to jobs that you like?
Um, I definitely like Hegseth
Hmm.
and um
What do you like about him?
just his overall experience. I think that he gets what is going to be important for the military to function properly.
Mhm.
I'm an Air Force brat, so I'm definitely pro military. I think he's a good fit. Um, and I'm excited about RFK Jr. if he's able to get, get confirmed. So
Yeah. Are you interested in some of the things he says about food? Does that interest you?
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, well, you probably know my age because we're about the same age, but I mean, being older than 60 years old and being able to change my diet and to gain new strength to,
Yeah.
be healthier, like it has made a huge difference. So yeah, I totally agree with what he's saying.
That's awesome. We're really grateful that you joined. I'm glad your audio worked, and I hope you'll come back on a regular basis.
Okay, thanks.
Sayonara, Karen-san. All right. Donald, come on in. Tell folks where you are. What's on your mind?
Sarasota, Florida.
All
You
right,
guys should,
Sarasota. Hmm.
yeah.
Fantastic.
Hey, thank you, thank you. Well, we're right down the interstate, but
Or
Mark
up,
should
up,
come down.
up.
Mark,
I'm in Miami.
yeah, the Mark should come down and bring the team for a number of the club that are comedy clubs that are on the interstate down this way.
You got a
So
lot of comedy
spring
clubs. I did not
trainings,
know that.
and spring
Yeah,
trainings right around the
I haven't
corner.
been to spring training in a while, so I'm due. So thank you for reminding me to see if I can schedule them.
Yeah. The reason why most of my questions was first of all, I think there was a reaction by the two-way fans that when you guys went off the air for 2 weeks, man, I think there was an abundance of adrenaline of you guys coming back on.
All
And
right. Well, we appreciate everybody's patience. We had to take a break because everybody needed a little bit of downtime, and people, particularly the people who work so hard to produce the show. But we're glad to see everybody back, and we got a lot to talk about. So hopefully, the absence only made people revved up.
so my question is basically this, and that is, if you listen to what the reports are with what Trump's going to do, and what the team has put together. I think you will agree that Trump's more disciplined, or his organization is more disciplined than it was. They obviously have a short window because it's not 4 years, it's 2 years. And it
Mhm.
appears as though it's going to be a shock and awe kind of deal of him coming out off the 20th. The press hasn't really reconciled that with how they covered the White House in the past 3 or 4 years. At the same time, they've never named names of the guys who were in the quote unquote advisors to Biden, which no one ever holds them accountable for some of the decisions that were made. How are you guys going to catch up or be able to get on the train? Because I think he's going to blow right past you. I think Trump is
Yeah.
going to stay in this mode of not being in front of the camera, and he's just going to blow the first 2 years go by. And when people start seeing the results, I think they're going to adapt. Now, how are you going to catch up, or how are you going to reconcile how we didn't cover this, how we didn't cover
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
Okay, how do you not,
It's a brilliant questions. Now, I will say before I turn it over to Mark, Mark is one of the reporters who is I exempt from my normal critique of
Mhm.
failure. Mark is a clear-eyed, honest, fair reporter, which is why he's got such great sources across the board. So he can speak for himself in a minute, but Mark is not going to. They're not going to blow by Mark. They may blow his most. I have said before, I don't understand how these news organizations can have the same people, the same editors, the same anchors, the same correspondents covering the Trump administration who just spent 4 years colluding with the Biden administration without coming clean. I just don't understand it. So that's part of the problem. But I think you put your finger on a thing that my friend Joe says, if you're moving 800 miles an hour, it's very hard for anybody to keep up with you. And I think you're right that it's going to be difficult, particularly because the Democratic donors are dispirited. And I already talked earlier in the program about the lack of big figures who can try to keep rhetorically up with Trump. And there'll always be a seven-ring circus going on. So even if the press tries its hardest to covering all seven rings is going to be tough. So the ideology is a problem, the bandwidth is a problem, and the fact that Trump has an army now, inside and outside. All those podcasters and all those people on social media, they're not going away. They're part of this whole operation, and there are no analogs on the left,
as
uh,
well as the power
yeah,
of MAGA?
as well as the power of MAGA. So, Mark, what are your thoughts on this extremely important issue, or set of issues, really?
Yeah, a few times during the break, I've grown fond of Negronis, and finally just went out and bought the gin and the Campari, and I wound up drinking too much over the break, and I kept starting to tweet how angry I was at how we and the mainstream media fucked up covering Biden. But then I would stop myself. But I can say as a you know in a related topic, what Mark had said, when I was at Politico and when I was at NBC, 2021, the covered Biden in 2020 for Politico, and in 2021 left for NBC in 2022, but lost my job there afterward. Was watching the mainstream media react along with the rest of the body politic like an immune system to a foreign agent in Trump, and to throw every macrophage and immune system response at him really just sort of damaged us, I think. I don't really have a lot of problem with the coverage of Trump. I have a lot of problem with the way in which Biden was covered. The problems I do have with the way Trump has been covered in the mainstream media is that our social class is generally higher educated. It is now increasingly concentrated, the national political news media, in DC and New York. They disproportionately draw from Ivy League schools. Nothing against Harvard, Mark. Um,
No offense, no offense taken.
No,
If I could erase it from my resume, I would.
No, I
I
would
was,
have gone to Harvard. I still would.
and I'm a
But
GW grad, so
what it's really brought home, as local, state, and regional newspapers have collapsed, and national political coverage has been concentrated in two cities, New York and DC, the issue of culture has really come to the fore, and the way the mainstream media has covered politics has been increasingly from a more a liberal mindset or view, which became more progressive. I noticed in 2015, when I was hired on to Politico from the Miami Herald, where I worked, I was like, I wound up working with young reporters who had gone to Columbia who knew more about the theory of intersectionality than about how to write a lead, how to write a headline, how to report out a story, like just kind of the nuts and bolts stuff. Now, I started out in newspapers, and man, I made every mistake along the way. but it's just different. I'm also a second generation reporter as well, so I to a degree, I learned some of the craft from osmosis from my dad, but that has just been a huge problem. And so, to the degree to which we have covered Trump wrong, I think it has been sort of in aggregate, in always being like, always taking sort of the Democratic side, or a little too often of like, oh my God, he's going to end democracy, he's a threat to the system, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And there's just been this kind of hyperventilation and this constant sky is falling paradigm with the mainstream media coverage of Trump, which a lot of people have just started to ignore. David Shore, a Democratic analyst, poll guy, data whiz, recently posted on Twitter something interesting about how the number one group that Democrats increased their vote share with were the people who pay attention to the mainstream media. But fewer people are paying attention to the mainstream media. And Trump got a higher proportion of this bigger growing share of the electorate, while Harris got a bigger proportion of a shrinking share of the electorate when you think of it kind of epistemologically. So that problem has just kind of come to the fore. Will Trump continue to blow by, to use your phrase, the mainstream media? Yes. And it's incumbent on us to, I think, to kind of retrench and to apply sort of an old school standard of, fair, accurate balance. That doesn't mean just because you say balance that, oh, we've got to, put in a bogus talking point from the other side simply because the other side said it. But those principles still apply. And I think we became unmoored from that during the first 8 Trump years. And hopefully this will be a bit of a reset for the way in which we approach it going forward.
So, and which gets to another point where the mainstream media, the upper level, the New York, Washington, D.C. gamut, why is there, and I'll give this example. Marcia McCallum from Fox News had, I think, Mayorkas on, or had someone from the Biden administration on during the break. She got 2 questions in on the guy, had him on the ropes, but she wouldn't, and this is apparently consistent with others, and that is there was no nailing. They wouldn't use the third bullet and shoot them dead.
Yeah.
In the question.
So,
and I don't know why that is.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think the interview I'm talking about.
I didn't see it. I'm sorry.
So Donald, I'll tell you, as someone who's conducted live interviews with people who are evasive, you face a choice, right? How many times are you willing to ask it if they're not going to answer?
3.
And you've got limited time. My policy is, if the question's worth asking, it's worth staying with it until you get an answer. But you have to do it in a way that makes good television. And that means you have to say, Mr. Secretary, I'm stopping right here and I'm acknowledging I've asked you twice a very direct question. You've declined to answer it both times. I don't want to spend the whole interview talking about this, but I think it's a really important question, or I wouldn't have asked it. So I'm going to ask you one more time in as clear a way as I can. And you can either answer it or you can say you're declining to answer it. But I want the viewers to know one or the other. Either you're going to give us a direct answer or you're declining. That's what I do, but that's my style. I think I share your frustration. When they ask it twice and then they move on, they just wasted the time. And they haven't put in sharp relief the failure to answer. But that is more common than I wish it were. So you cited one example, but I could cite 100. The other thing is they got to stop asking yes/no questions. They have to stop asking questions the guests are expecting. I don't know how many times I have to say these things until people will listen to me.
You were looking for suggestions before the break. If you remember the old Meet the Press back before Russell, where in a segment of the Meet the Press, they would have 3. They would have a liberal, a conservative, and an independent person, and one person to interview.
Yeah.
I wonder if that would.
I'm for that. I'm for that. It's hard to book, but I'm for that. Very grateful to you for coming on, Donald. You asked great questions and teed up issues. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Come back regularly. All right, Hugo, welcome in. Question for Mark. Thank you for joining. Where are you tonight?
Wonderful Mystic, Connecticut.
Oh, cold.
Beautiful.
So, yeah, it's cold. It snowed today. But I echo what I think her name was Janet said earlier, that we were just counting the days until you came back. It was
appreciate that.
Yeah, really fantastic to see you all again this morning. Regarding words, I love that you use the word imperiled to refer to the various Trump nominees. That was a great choice. And regarding Wordle, I don't have any uh, evidence to back this up, but I use three different words: store, stare, and stree. STRAE, which is an old Scottish word for straw. And I almost probably 75% of the time I get it in three guesses. And
What?
in hard mode.
What? Mark, do you play
I'm
Wordle?
not lying.
I am not a Wordle guy. Well, the rest of
All
my
right. Well,
family is.
if you were, you would know that what this man is saying makes him like Rumpelstiltskin. He's got some special magic. First of all,
Rumpelstiltskin, right.
I start with the jur too, Dean. I can't imagine that it really takes straw, but I'll be trying that tomorrow. That's a crazy word, Hugo. All right,
It's
Hugo, is there something else you wanted to say? I totally
I
appreciate
I
those two things, but
the only reason I came upon stree was because it was a variation of stare.
yeah,
So
it's three. All right.
um the only other thing I wanted to say was that I read a really good article, a really good post from Matthew Iglesias today in his Slow Boring newsletter, and he was lamenting the fact that there were so many folks who had stayed away from the Trump administration in 2016, but now are on board. But they're afraid to criticize him. And specifically, he was talking about January 6th and whether or not Trump's going to pardon the folks who were arrested for the the riots at the Capitol. So I'm trying to let this go, and it's not eating me alive. But I was just wondering what you guys thought about it. It's
Okay.
What
Good question,
specifically?
Hugo. Yeah, good. Go
Yeah,
ahead. Read, read.
yeah, I didn't quite know what we thought about what specifically.
about whether or not Trump should pardon the folks who were arrested on
And
January
convict
6th.
and convicted. Hugo, thank you. Mark, what do you think of the politics of that?
Well, I can understand why Trump would do it for some of them. I mean, but I don't know. That I'm one of those people who has not spent a whole heck of a lot of time on January 6th. So, uh, as for the president's policies of doing it or not, I, obviously January 6th didn't hurt his reelection chances. And I generally approach things as a campaigns reporter. And so I think, okay, is this going to hurt him or help him? And I doubt it's going to hurt him. I mean, it's in his power to pardon people. And he all along has basically said it was kind of a beautiful day. So I think ultimately this is going to be one of those things that the news media and maybe guys like Matt Iglesias are going to focus on a lot, but the rest of the nation isn't. I mean, I did take issue over the break. I saw that some chatter on social media. In fact, it was one of those guys I almost replied to. Is Matt Iglesias was like, "Oh my God, I didn't realize Biden Biden was so old, right?" And oh, the media wasn't complicit in the cover up. It's like, oh, give me a fucking break, right? So
Yeah.
I'm just not sure how much of a straight shooter that guy is.
Thank you, Mark. All right, Sean, welcome in. Where are you tonight? What's on your mind?
Thanks for having me on. I'm in sunny Los Angeles, and my question would have been perfect for your last 2A tonight of the year of last year. It's related to blue cities. I'm a Trump
Mhm.
supporter, and even though we had a couple propositions that panned our way with regards to crime, there's still a lot of problems in big city, blue states. And I wanted to see if there's if you know of any appetite with the Republicans in DC to do anything about that. Because for us here in a state, 4 in 10 Californians voted for Trump, believe it or not.
Yep.
And it feels like it's impossible to do something here with respect to education, crime, and homelessness. Those three, homelessness and housing. So those topics, big topics. I know conservatives typically like to leave things to the state, But these are problems that are not going away. And at least from my perspective, the only route seems to be a federal type of solution. And on a
Yes.
similar note, if there's any kind of, Trump loves pomp and circumstance, and we have an Olympics coming up in LA in 4 years where he's going to be the president. Is there anything to get that on the radar for him now to do something about that, or get it in something to fix, at least in Los Angeles, on a selfish perspective, to do something to help the city along
Yep.
in preparation for that?
So I'll say briefly and then kick it to Mark. The center right does care about all those issues, but it's not just because conservatives don't like to take over state and local. It's better for stuff to be dealt with at state and local. So if you care about crime and education and homelessness and housing, I'd urge you to figure out how to get mayor and city council and a governor and state legislatures. I know it's hard in California, but they're the ones who are going to have to deal with it. Trump will deal with all those issues to some extent, but the federal role in those four issues is just not very big. It's just not. As for the Olympics, yes, Trump will care a lot about the Olympics. Mark, what are your thoughts?
This is not going to answer your question, but it's one of those things that interests me. Is when I see coverage in other places, and I go to places like New York and DC, and from what I understand, you see it in LA as well. Every item in the CVS is behind glass now, or behind plastic, because there's just so much shoplifting. We don't really have that in Florida. And I don't think we necessarily have that in Florida because everyone's armed, or because the cops are there, or because we have more Republican politicians. Just brings home to me just the idea of culture. And there's just something pernicious that can take place in a society where suddenly everyone decides, like, you know what, we're just going to shoplift. Or, you know what, we're going to light someone on fire on the subway. And I just don't know ultimately how much a politician or a political party can solve that problem, or perhaps even be to blame for it. Don't get me wrong. I don't think it's a good idea to not arrest people for committing crimes. And I think it's a bad idea to not disincentivize, which is a backward say of almost incentivizing shoplifting. But there are cultural changes that probably need to take place in a lot of these cities, from what you're telling me, like LA, that I don't know how those get fixed.
Yeah, but not by Washington, probably. Sean,
No.
thank you for coming. Thank you for coming on. Appreciate it. Please come back regularly. Okay. I'm going to do everybody a huge favor and tell you, read everything Mark writes. There are very few reporters whose work I consume in full, and Mark is one of them. So follow him on Twitter, X, set an alert. Read all his stories, now findable at Axios. I'm telling you, if you want to understand not just Florida and the Trump administration, but the known civilization and universe, Mark Caputo is your man. Now, I'm serious. Everybody should follow him. Mark, very grateful to you for making time. Congratulations on the interview and the new job. Ray, Bruce, Richard, others with your hands up. I'm sorry I didn't get to you. I have a birthday party to get to, so we're ending a little bit early tonight. Happy New Year to everybody. Thank you for joining. We'll be back. Mark, thank you again. We'll be back 9 a.m. Eastern time tomorrow for the morning meeting, and we'll be back 6 p.m. tomorrow, regular time, for this program. And lots of announcements. I keep telling you, lots of announcements coming. Karen, sayonara, konbanwa, and thank you, everybody. Good night.